For wedding, the
Ritual is
goat
done.
has been sacrificed. I'm about to go live.
Okay.
Here we go.
Went
Here
through
we
some
go.
Sandman.
Thanks for waiting, guys. Hey, hello, everybody. We should be live now. Thanks for waiting with us here. I'm Dave, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com, joined today by BlerdWithoutFear. We got Ernie on the line, as well as Verno from the Cerebros and the new comic breakdowns that y'all should check out here on YouTube as well. Let us know how things are coming through. How's the video? How's the audio? And we're going to talk all things X-Men Inferno today, okay? So thanks to those of you who have joined us here live. Much appreciated. Get your questions in the chat, and we will try to tackle those that we can. I think otherwise, the super chat is available. If you want to get a priority question, make sure we see it. That is the best way to do so, and obviously greatly, greatly appreciated. But otherwise, we're going to talk the big X-Men issue today. We're going to talk Inferno #1. We will probably, if there's time at the end, we may dig into Sword #8. I got to admit, I didn't even get to Wolverine #16. I was so caught up thinking about Inferno and talking to people about Inferno that I downloaded Wolverine and just plumb forgot to read it. Okay, so I have no Wolverine thoughts beyond like a few panels I've seen, but we'll dig straight into Inferno. Yeah, if everything's working, keep letting us know in the chat. That's appreciated. But let's dig into it. Let's do this because we're starting late here. Ernie, I want to start with you.
Okay.
Reactions to Inferno #1. What did you think about it? Were you happy with it? What were your initial reactions?
Initial reactions. I was very pleased with what I read. It was good to finally, start seeing some more of Moira, seeing some more of the playing into all the other stuff going on with Mystique and Orcus. It was good to it felt good to touch those plot threads again. So I was really into it. There was a lot of, I won't say like shocking things that happened. I think there's one like particularly shocking thing that I thought was legitimately shocking, but everything else was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. This is all right. Yeah, this is happening. Okay, cool. I kind of expected something like this to be going. Okay, that's nice too. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. We're getting somewhere. And then like by the time you get to the end of it, and you're just like, oh my god. It's like it's like okay, now we're getting somewhere. Like I guess this was like the turn. This was like, oh man, this is where everything is starting to really come together.
Right.
And I loved it. I loved it. It did feel a little long, but it wasn't, not in a bad way. I kept looking. I was like,
you noticed the length of it.
Oh
yeah.
I was like, oh wait, I'm at page 40. There's still 15 more pages left. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Verno, what'd you think? What were your initial reactions and kind of where do you net out now, just broad, like big picture? And I should say, before I let you answer, we will be talking all things Inferno #1 today. We will be talking the Hickman X-Men run, so anticipate that we will be talking in depth. Spoilers will follow. The assumption is if you're here, you don't mind that, or you've read it. One of those two things. All right. So Verno, reactions.
I loved it. I definitely loved it. I agree with a lot of the points that Ernie made. I always say this a lot. There's the experience of reading the comic for the first time, and then there's reading it the second time. And this is one of the few times where I enjoyed it better on the first read through, because there was a lot of, first of all, one thing I wasn't expecting and that I really enjoyed, and I hope we get more of in the next 3 issues, is more callbacks to Hickman's Inferno or Hickman's X-Men run. And just like the Dawn of X in general.
Yeah.
We get a little Terra Verde mention, little horticulture, just things like that. And as soon as I realized, like, oh, this is his like an end of an era kind of, he's going to do all these little odes to the era. You know what I mean? So that was cool. I loved the ending. I liked the little Bishop part. There was a lot of good moments. It felt a little like a lot of Hickman's comics can feel, where it was like stilted. There's all these different sections that don't necessarily mesh together. You know what I mean? Some feel a little bit out of place, but overall, I thought it was really fun. I loved it, especially the ending. The ending kind of set it over the top for me and like blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah. I talked in, so I did get to do a Krakin Krakoa, and this is, I should say, I didn't even say up top. So this is formally Krakin Krakoa #200. I've done 200 of these now. We're going to count this post game live as the 200th rendition of this. And it feels fitting that it would be Inferno #1, definitely. Like I've literally withheld doing videos because I'm like, I want to line up this dumb numbering thing I have in my head. Very, very comics brain on that one. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the ending, the thing I talked about is Hickman is very good about, and he talks in interviews about maintaining this thing he calls narrative velocity, right? But I think essentially what just that means is story and plotting that has the feel of genuinely moving forward, right? Marvel is so frequently, and there's this quote attributed to Stan Lee, I think probably incorrectly, like many things with Stan and Marvel, but about the illusion of change, right? And this thing where it's like we want superhero readers to feel like things are changing, but it's an illusion because really things never totally change. We're kind of stuck in Marvel time, right? And what Hickman's pretty good at doing is actually defying the illusion of change and actually trying to change something, right? And that's what the ending of this comic feels like. It felt like a thing that, okay, this might happen in the second issue, this might happen in the third issue, it might be after all sorts of battles and dialogue and conversation, but no, just we're going to jump that gun and we're just going to get into it. I thought, and we'll talk specifically about what the ending is. Again, for people hopping on, this will be a spoiler-filled conversation. But I think big picture, I'm kind of with you guys in terms of reaction. I thought it was very good. It did not blow my mind. I think that's one thing I've kind of had to do for myself is the advantage House and Powers had is the advantage that anything brand new has. You don't know where it's going. And that newness and that freshness and that, oh my goodness, X-Men are back and it's going to be this new brand new era, it's impossible to recapture that at a later stage, right? All you can do now, or the best you can do now, is pay off the story and the seeds that you've planted, right? But you can't recapture the magic of a new thing. And I think a lot of readers, myself included sometimes, are struggling with that because it's like, oh, is Inferno as good in House and Powers? And I think in so many ways, it just can't be. It can't be the same thing. It's not the introduction. It's not the start of the ride. We can't go back. Nonetheless, I think it's very good at setting expectations for what this story's going to be. I think part of the downside is just if you're in it, like all of us are, reading the comics, talking about the comics, discussing it, we knew most of what was coming, I think, in a lot of ways, right? With the exception of the timing of the end of this comic, right? So I'm just going to say it now, so get ready. Again, if you don't want spoilers, bail right now, because this is the big one. At the end of this comic, Destiny's back, okay? Not, oh, maybe Destiny will get resurrected. Not, oh, we have a plan to get Destiny resurrected. She's straight up back. She is strutting her stuff. She doesn't look like she's 97 anymore, at least to me. She is back, and she's just plopping down in Apocalypse's seat on the Quiet Council, being like, what's up, let's vote, with Mystique's glee as they hold this vote, potentially to have Destiny on the council. And Magneto looking like a grumpy toddler, which was an incredible visual. I loved it. That's awesome. That's fantastic. But with the exception of that, I would say we kind of knew the beats in the info and the general story that was going to be here. And all of it is setting the stage for still mostly just raising the questions that we had, just kind of about Moira, about Doug, about Emma. It's kind of just amplifying those questions and being like, yep, those are still the questions. Remember, we're going to talk about those in issues 2, 3, and 4, which I'm super excited for. My first question for you guys. Let's talk about it since I just went there. Destiny's Resurrection. 1, reaction to it. 2, how do you think this happened specifically, and what do you think it means? Verno, let's start with you on this one.
Reaction to it is that it was awesome. It very much caught me off guard. It was something that I think most of us didn't think we would get until, the 3rd or 4th issue, to the end of this thing. So it's interesting, and it's intriguing that he did it right off the bat. Who resurrected her? Dave, Ernie, you guys are going to know better than I am. There is a plethora, or a plethora, whichever one you prefer, of ways in the Marvel universe to resurrect people and things. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of ways. I personally hope that it's not like some very random thing that doesn't have anything to do with the X-Men. Like if Proteus did it, then that would be cool. But I just hope it's not something like way out of left field. So as far as that goes, I don't really have any guesses. I guess one would be
like what if it was the Jackal? Like, what if it was like,
Oh,
hey,
God.
it was Spider-Man's Jackal clone, just totally out of left field. You know, I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying though. There are a million
Yeah.
ways,
Yeah.
and I actually like that bit with the Orcus dialogue where they were like, hey, the same people keep coming back even though they keep dying. What are we looking at here? Are we looking at a clone situation? Are we looking, you know? And they're like, they don't know it's specifically resurrection, but they're like, yeah, we know you have options to have the same bodies thrown at us. Like that science is readily available in the Marvel U. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I just there was a bit in Trial of Magneto #2 where Hope seemed to have some secrets. She was basically saying we need to get this, or I don't know if she was saying it, but it seemed that she might have known more than she was letting on, and it may or may not have had something to do with the person that looked like Magneto that stole the Cerebro helmet. So maybe she had something to do with it. You know, I don't know. I'm curious to hear what theories you guys have.
I saw somebody joke on Twitter today that if there were 3 Magnetos, it would solve so many questions and problems. So if we launched a 3 Magnetos mini, that would explain all the various Magneto mysteries going on. I thought that was funny. Please do not listen to that idea, Marvel. I know you're listening.
Can't be any worse than 3 Jokers. Right?
Exactly. Ernie, what did you think of Destiny's Resurrection? Did it surprise you? And how do you think it happened? What do you think the ramifications are?
It didn't surprise me that it happened. It surprised me how early it happened.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to. I always expected at some point Destiny is going to come back. I've thought that since House of X. I'm like, no, at some point she's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. I really didn't expect it to be like issue #1 of Inferno where that happens. As far as how. My mind is all over the place on it. I'm with one of my thoughts is kind of with Verno in line of. Part of me wonders if Hope has something to do with it because I did think it was kind of weird. Hope's behavior in Trial of Magneto I thought was a little odd. But if you kind of go back into some of the other stuff that's been going on, like New Mutants, the 5 have seemed to kind of be taking umbrage with at least one aspect of some things that the Quiet Council has been doing in terms of resurrection. So part of me wonders if that has something to do with it. But however it happened, I wouldn't be shocked if Sinister was also involved in some way. I kind of feel like maybe Moira, the idea that she had, Mystique had it first. And just kind of beat her to it. But another thing I kind of thought about too, and I don't know, maybe this one is kind of more out of left field. I don't think this is what happened, but I'm positive that if it did happen, I wouldn't be surprised. There is a mutant on the island now who has the same power that Mystique does. And part of me kind of wondered for a split second, just because there was a little bit of a lingering rather on a panel where Gimmick from Children of the Atom and Mystique had met one another. And Mystique took a particular interest in her when she realized what she could do. And part of me had kind of wondered if maybe this is just some like smoke and mirrors act, like until she can actually get Destiny back to kind of mess with things. But if that was the case, it'd be way too convoluted. The resurrection thing would just make more sense.
yeah, right.
Just let the 5 be like in business for themselves or something, or
Yeah,
they're mad at Dad.
Right. No, exactly. I think that's what it is. I mean, so one of the like combined pieces that I think is interesting in this issue is, so the issue opens with a scene of Emma resurrecting Charles and Magneto, right? And it totally mirrors, what we saw in House of X, so that artistically, right, with the visual of Professor X saying, "To me, my X-Men." It's great. Love seeing Emma with the Cerebro helmet welcoming them back. The piece that we don't know is, when did that happen? Because there's a possibility. So my read on it and my take that I put in the video was, that's probably a flash forward. That is probably a thing that is to come, and we're going to learn about how and why throughout this event. There's a possibility, though, that actually that was before everything we read, like the way, like it actually played chronologically in the issue. You could make an argument potentially that, like, well, could that have been ramifications of Onslaught, like things that have happened on the island
like from
right
Way
now?
of X, yeah.
Yeah, like through Way of X and the Onslaught Revelation, like a lot of weird stuff happened. Professor X definitely died at least once. I don't anticipate it'll be that specifically, but if it happened before, here's the thing. Emma would have had time and the Cerebro helmet and clearly the resurrection capabilities to bring Destiny back, right? That is the perfect time to do it without Professor X and Magneto knowing. So I could see it going both ways. I still stand by, I think that scene is the future. I think that's kind of going to be how Inferno ends in a lot of ways, is Professor X and Magneto brought low, their secret scheming and clearly just working around everyone and doing what they think is best for all of mutant kind is going to be the ruin of them, and that they're going to then be resurrected into a new version of Krakoa by Emma, where they are no longer so solely in power or so solely controlling of state secrets. As far as Destiny goes, just big picture, I mean, yes, I think it was an amazing turn. I love the timing of it. Absolutely love it. I compared it to Breaking Bad season 5, the first episode, when like all the hype of that season was like, oh, when's Hank gonna find out, about Walt, and like, oh, he's so close, and when are they gonna confront? And they just jumped right into it. They just jumped right into it because they're like, we know we have a big, massive story. We have so much good story to tell. We'll give you this now. And that's one of the things that I harp on the most with comics is like, a story's going to be good when they just drop huge stuff up front because they have the confidence to say we have good stuff for later. It's part of why I've been increasingly resistant to the slow burn of so much of the Dawn of X. If you look at Excalibur, if you look at Marauders, if you look at X-Force, for example, it's like, I don't think they have the goods. I don't think they have the confidence to say, we have the goods, we'll just give you the good stuff now, right? So not to make it about that, but I think that's awesome in Inferno. I think Destiny back. To me, one thing that pushes on is Destiny's here. The Moira secret can't last much longer. Like, the secrecy of her character, which first off, she doesn't seem to be into, intriguing.
Right, it seemed like she was in House of X.
Yeah.
Which is weird that now it's like the opposite. Like she's like, well, why do I have to hide?
Yeah. Like she's annoyed. She's angry at Magneto and Professor X here, like extensively. And the fact that she's mad about that, and the fact that Destiny's back now, it's like, how much longer can the secret last? Like, I don't know if it lasts beyond the next issue before all of mutant kind is aware. And then the other piece of it too is like, well, Orcus just found the gateway to her no place potentially. They're working with horde culture to hack gateways. Like, they could be walking into Moira's house for tea time next issue as well, right? And sending in the Nimrod. So that I anticipate is going to get blown up, which I love. I'm all for that. I think that secret needs to come out. I think that really changes the direction of the line, which is the promise of this event, right? The promise of this event is the Krakoa era can't be the same after it. Right. It has to change significantly, and it has to mean we get different kinds of stories. I wanted to ask you guys as well. So there's a page that I found really, really fascinating. And they even teased this one in like previews. It's Moira's third life, which we get the flashback to the Destiny Mystique conversation. It's a new perspective this time, right? We get additional dialogue. Some dialogue has changed. It seems, the read on it that I had is like, okay, this seems like it's probably from the perspective of Mystique or Destiny versus in House of X, it was probably from the perspective of Moira, or it's just Hickman editing himself, like Kanye Life of Pablo style, just being like, this is an unfinished work. It never ends. I'll edit this however I want. It could go either way. But we get that flashback, but then Moira goes back to revisit. So in her third life, the lab is burned by the Brotherhood. In that life, Moira was working on a cure for mutant kind because she hated her mutant ability. She was like driven mad by it in some ways, So she used her scientific prowess to say, I need a cure. We'll use this for mutant kind. We'll use this for the good. So I don't have to keep living lives. She didn't want that. And we forget that, or I forget that now because she's gone through these lifelines, but she only goes through these lifelines 4 through 9 as an advocate for mutant kind because Destiny would burn her alive if she didn't. Right? It's all fear-based, I think, is the huge revelation here, as opposed to Moira as a willing participant and like part of the cause. Like, there's a lot of doubt cast on that, I think, within Moira's own psyche. So here's the question I want to pose to you guys. There's that page of Moira revisiting the facility, and finding the cure. And she finds a notebook with the cure in her 10th life. Now, we know the facility was burned in the 3rd life. The notebook still exists in the 10th life. What is happening here? And how do we rationalize Moira having the cure in this lifeline? What do you guys think?
Damn. I'm not gonna lie, I missed that. I didn't even pick up that she found the cure in this book. And that doesn't make any sense. I see what you're saying. Basically, it seems like she, at one point in this lifetime, she was on the same path that she was on in her 3rd lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That does not make any sense to me. I'm
that
curious.
is, yeah, no, that's incredibly odd, because like there's not supposed to be any carryover from one life to the next, except for Moira's memories. That's the only thing that she maintains, is the memory of the previous life. So the fact that, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe one could make the argument that maybe she, because she does seem to still go through some of, like, this, not all the same beats of a previous life, but like some of them.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost make the argument that maybe, like, you know, she still followed, like, you know, her scientific pursuits, but maybe she didn't, maybe like there was, you know, maybe she got involved with one thing just to kind of see how far we're going and then backed out of it, and, you know, or whatever. But I don't know. I just feel like even if she did that, Destiny would have, you know, came and, you know, clapped her up. You know,
Right.
You know, just for even so much as, you know, sniffing in that direction. But I don't know. It's crazy to think about. Like I'm legitimately baffled by it.
Right. So, like,
legitimately baffled.
It wouldn't be like that entertaining of a thing to do. I don't think they would want to do it, but maybe it's just she wanted certain things to happen the way that they did happen. So she just followed the steps that she was following, ensuring that things stayed, you know what I mean? Maybe there was one aspect, okay, as long as I do this, then Charles is going to do this. But he did it. Now I can swerve. It seems It seems a little thin. I don't actually believe that, but you know what I mean?
So
she still has a card to play. Like, and that might be a hint of what she's going to try and do.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Dave's about to explain it to us right now. What the hell is going on, Dave?
So here's my theory. So, okay. My first thought was she's carrying around Destiny's diaries or something, because that was, you know, we've seen her reading those Destiny's diaries. Destiny writes down all the futures. Maybe Destiny had jotted down, maybe, you know, in her future predicting state. That was my first read on it. And I was kind of like, well, I don't totally know what to make of that. You could also make a case that, like, maybe she just remembers. Maybe she just remembers it from Life 3 and she's jotting notes down in a weirdly charred notebook. Maybe she likes that style. I think what is more likely is after Destiny died in X-Men continuity, which happens, you know, time-wise, like 1989, 1990, right? Or like it's right before the original Inferno, actually. I think it's right around there. In Uncanny X-Men, circa, or courtesy of Legion / Shadow King, for those of you who haven't read those comics. Destiny dies. Moira maybe would have had the opportunity to be like, okay, Destiny's dead, and I can do what I want now. So it's a possibility that she actually spent some time in Life 10 working on the cure, because she's still... I think the real crux of this issue of Inferno #1, the real thing that we're learning here, is the implication is there's a very strong doubt still in Moira's mind that she even should be trying to help mutant kind advance towards survival. One, because it's impossible, because they always lose, or it seems that way to her. And two, because she doesn't even want that. I think she, like, kind of just wants to die and not have to keep reliving these lives. That is the character read that I'm getting on her, the way the perspective is framed now, right? So it makes sense to me that after Destiny died, she goes to the lab, she finds these doctors that she knows developed a cure with her in a past life, and she does it, and she develops the thing. But what happens then is the lab has still been burned to the ground. I think this is Destiny posthumously gave Mystique clearly all sorts of instructions about, like, futures that were to pass, right? She told her, if, there comes a time where they won't bring me back, burn that place to the ground, right? It's vague, but it's clearly, like, now, like, oh, Krakoa. Destiny could have given Mystique similar instructions. Like, hey, if Moira's working with these people in a lab, or however she does it, burn that place to the ground. All of her instructions are burn-placed, very arson-based instructions. But nonetheless, she gives this instruction. That's what happened when Moira died. Mystique burned her alive, I think, in, like, the early 2000s, right? That's the death of Moira, which we know now is, like, a fake death. but she tried to kill her. Maybe she tried to kill her in at Destiny's behest. Because the piece of this that has to add up for me, as all these continuity pieces get wrangled and, you know, all sorts of stuff that doesn't matter, but does it work? I think it does. The piece that has, like, Destiny still should have known, should have had a future prediction that even after her death, that Moira might try it. Because otherwise, that was always the out that Moira would have, would be like, oh, I'll just kill Destiny, and then I could do whatever I want after that fact, right? Destiny doesn't control her past that point. So I think the story has to function in such a way where Destiny knew she would do this even after she died, and then basically had Mystique, you know, at her behest, burn it to the ground. So that's a theory. It might not be that, but otherwise, I'm just kind of like, why do you include that page, and why are we including these visuals of something that we only saw in Life 3 still existing in Life 10? There has to be a story there about how it got there. I think it's fascinating.
A great catch. Yeah, no, that's really cool. I didn't even think about. I didn't make that connection, but that's good stuff.
Cool. I thought,
and I have nothing to add to it.
Love it. Like I said, I'm still equally just baffled at the fact that it's something that, you know, that happened. Because I thought it was strange when I saw it. I thought it was incredibly strange. It just seemed like, I was like,
my eyes kind of went over it the first couple times.
Right.
I was kind of just like, why is this page here? You know, I had a few of those moments, right? And I think this is, you know, this is the thing, is like, we're on issue 1 of a 4-issue mini that is the end of Hickman's story as we know it.
Right.
So it's like, to me, this is a very careful plotter. I don't anticipate there are a lot of pages that don't mean things for these 4 issues specifically, right? That don't have a very particular purpose. And sometimes that can be a red herring. Sometimes we read too deeply into that, you know, and give Hickman too much credit. But I think with something like this, the story here is Moira and her doubt and what is her plan. And then, you know, I think the thing that answers is the biggest question going into this for me, and there are many good ones, is why is Moira so scared of Destiny? Why on earth does she not want her brought back so badly? And I think the main theory to this point, or a common theory, has been like, oh, Moira has plans for assimilation to the Phalanx, and they aren't in the best interest of mutant kind, and Destiny would put the kibosh on that. But it could be a lot simpler. It could be a lot simpler and just be like, Moira wants to develop a cure for mutant kind, specifically for herself, more than anyone, and she doesn't want Destiny back because Destiny will ruin that. And she, you know, killed her one time, and she didn't like that. You know, so it's like that to me is the most likely answer, or at least that's the way this issue sets it up.
If that comes back as being as significant as it seems right now, then I love it. Then that's like my favorite panel in the book, just to make it so subtle and something that just passed by me 2 times. Like, that's super cool. By the way, I'm looking, and we talked about it before we got on it. Issue number 2 comes out October 27th, and it's 52 pages as well.
Massive.
So if people were curious, hopefully we've got another. It looks like 150 plus pages of X-Men from Hickman.
I love that.
So hopefully
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love the size of it. It is kind of interesting that they would roll it out as that instead of an 8-week thing. You know, like clearly there's a desire to have this done by the start of the new year so they can keep the timeline and the publication calendar rolling. You know, which I'm not going to complain. I actually really like these giant-sized issues in a lot of ways. There's just so much meat to chew on. All right, I want to answer a super chat here because it ties into what we were just talking about. It's one of our readers here, I think it was Aaron. Thank you for the super chat here. Says, small error, ? The flashback to Moira's 3rd death had Destiny refer to her as Dr. McTaggart, but she never married Joseph in that life. Right. I think this is one of the interesting details about the diary, or the cure notebook that Moira's holding in Life 10, as well as she's listed as Moira McTaggart. She only has the McTaggart surname, as far as I know, in Life 10, when she married Dr. Joseph McTaggart, specifically to have the Omega level Proteus, right? As far as I know, she was never married to the horrible, abusive man, Joseph McTaggart, in any of her other lifelines. I think that's only a Life 10 thing. So I think if she's called Dr. McTaggart in Life 3, probably that's an error. Probably. I would guess there's not a big story about her also doing that in Life 3.
I would say, honestly, the only thing it makes, if it's a mistake, then it's a mistake. But if it was intentionally done, I think it lends a lot of credence to what you said earlier about this maybe being not Moira's notebook, but maybe being Destiny's, like maybe being one of her diaries, like maybe something that she like. If it is that, either way, yeah, it's one of those that. I mean, honestly, it's not the only mistake that I caught. There was, at least from a, there was a grammatical one later in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. These things happen.
A word was left out. That's not an uncommon thing. So mistakes do happen. But I don't know if I feel like almost everything that Hickman does, like you said earlier, there's usually some intent. You know, like I feel like, you know, he doesn't just put stuff in there because, you know, all the time. Like 90% of the time, it's usually because it's going to be paid off.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like maybe we'll learn a little more in the next, maybe in the next issue or two, possibly. But yeah, I don't know. It is strange. It is a strange and odd thing to put in there.
Yeah, no, I anticipate it'll pay off. I have high hopes for that one. We got some related good questions here that I wanna throw to you guys. What do you guys think about Destiny and Moira working together? Maybe they've been planning throughout Moira's 10th life to plot against Professor X and Magneto to get to Moira's 11th life, which includes mutants winning. Verno, thoughts on Moira and Destiny together again for the first time?
Moira and Destiny? I have no idea, man. I have no idea. You're breaking my brain right now. I got to sit and think about all these lives. I don't think they get along very well.
I'm with you on that.
Chances. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think that has much water unless you guys can explain to me why it or holds water, I should say. I don't know. I don't really follow that.
I like that twist from a break the rules, do the unexpected point of view. I don't think after this first issue that there's any chance of it. Moira seems genuinely terrified of Destiny and really wants her gone. Like she made efforts in this issue to have Destiny so she could never be resurrected. She made efforts in such a way that that hasn't happened for anyone, with the exception of like Sabretooth's maybe the closest, getting tossed in the pit. You know what I mean? No one has suffered the penalty to that degree of like no possible resurrection. So I think Moira genuinely hates and is terrified of Destiny. I don't see them coming together, at least in the short term.
No, I 1,000% agree. I don't think that's. You're talking about alliances. I think one that would make probably not as much sense, but maybe would be more likely to happen. Is when Charles is asking more, what if we tried to make peace with the machines? It's like, well, you had that opportunity, you screwed that up in Hellions. But you could have had Smileys on your side, but no, we had to screw it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I feel like that's yet another one of those things. It's like, I don't know. Put things on my bingo list that won't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the most credence I can give to it is if you have these alliances of Emma, Mystique, Destiny, let's throw Mr. Sinister in there because he's going to go whichever way the wind is blowing. Against Professor X and Magneto, I can see Moira on the side of against Professor X and Magneto in a way, like after this issue, in a way that I didn't really buy before this issue. Because clearly she's angry at them. Clearly they're not listening to her the way she expects that they will. I can see that more. So from that perspective, I can see Moira being like, I just don't like them. I'll work with whoever else. But again, it kind of depends on what Moira's goals actually are. Because it seems like her goal, at least the way this issue sets it up, is to develop a cure for mutant kind. And obviously Destiny has made her thoughts on that matter clear. So that ties into another good question here we got. I think this one's from Ryan. Thanks for the question and the support here in the chat, guys. I love to see these questions coming in. Theory. Moira has been secretly against mutants, and that's why she wants to keep Destiny precogs dead. Think of all she's done over the years to Magneto and messing with mutants on a grand scale. Do we think Moira's actually anti-mutant and is finally in Life 10 is like, I don't think working towards survival makes sense anymore. I just want to work to keep Destiny off the board so I can work on the thing that I thought, like her dream, her Professor X dream, is a world where a mutant cure is available. And that's the thing is like she doesn't view it in the Destiny sense of like, oh, if I make this available, it'll be Days of Future Past immediately. Like Moira's still like, this might work. This might be a good thing. and people who want it can have it. I think she
Right.
probably believes that. What do you guys think? Is that actually what Moira's doing, kind of working against mutant kind?
Yeah, having this conversation with you guys, it really, excuse me, it makes it all make more sense. Like the big question has been, why doesn't Moira want Destiny back? If that is the case, if she was working on the mutant cure, then that's like the perfect reason. Like Destiny would have known, she would have narked her out. You know what I mean? Like that, it makes a lot of sense. I'm almost convinced that that is the case. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the way the wind's blowing. Ernie, there was that, you mentioned this, Magneto and Charles here say like, hey, what if we work with the machines? Which is something that I think, a lot of people, including you and I, probably have theorized about, just kind of like, oh yeah, like it seems like that might be a possible future, given all the powers of 10 stuff, right? Where we have phalanx, we have homo novissima, we have post-human, basically combinations. Do you think that was a bluff? Or do you think that's actually somewhere we might go?
I think it's a possibility. I think it is a possibility because, and I might be, this is pie in the sky. So, take this with a grain of salt if you want. Go back to House of X, Powers 10, and especially the year 1000 stuff. And I remember a lot of people when all that stuff was coming out, and people were like, oh my God, Moira threw in her lot with Apocalypse of all people. And it's like, well, I mean, it was one of the things that she hadn't tried. It was like she was desperate. She was like, I've tried siding with Charles. I've tried siding with Magneto. I've tried, now I've tried siding with Apocalypse, and now trying to side with everybody. The one thing that I think she hasn't tried is siding with the machines.
Yeah,
right.
So I mean, it's one of those things that if I look at it from that perspective, I can go, yeah, that could probably happen. I think it would be very difficult, just considering the state that Orcus is in right now, and everything going on with Nimrod and Dr. Gregor, Director Devo, and especially if you start looking at the stuff going on with Jerry Duggan, with like Henry Peter Gyrick and Fei Long and Dr. Stasis. I feel like probably won't happen. but if it did, could be interesting.
Yeah.
Right. And Hickman has went out of his way to continuously write from the perspective of Orcus. Like he's written, like X-Men 20 is through the prism of a love story with Dr. Gregors. So maybe he's set something up for an alliance with them by at least portions or factions of the mutants. But I don't know. I think that would be interesting, because I actually do not just like those characters as in villains, but like I have empathy for the people of Orcus, and that's from Hickman's design and not something he did on accident. You know what I mean? So there might be something there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is an important, I think, development to make Orcus not so obviously like the quote-unquote bad guys. I just think that general blurring of good and bad is a good thing for any characters that we're dealing with. It's why all of these villains that show up on Krakoa are so compelling, or the ones that are, like a Magneto is obviously the famous example of this, but it's like, is he a villain? Is he a hero? It doesn't matter. He's a really well-developed character who has a lot to him. And that's why we like the character. So there's a nice thought here in the chat that I think ties into what you guys were just saying, and kind of what we've been talking about with Moira. Could that cure be about the legacy virus? So when Moira was working on the legacy virus in Muir Island, maybe in this timeline, she not only tried to make the legacy virus cure, but also a mutant cure. Did she sneak in the mutant cure developments while she's doing all that 90s legacy virus stuff? I'm into it. I'm into that theory. I think that works. That would explain. Yeah, right. Like she was in the lab constantly. Like that's her. Like if you read 90s Uncanny X-Men or Excalibur in the books that she's in, like every 5th page is like Moira in the lab, right? Like she's constantly doing it.
She's got beakers and Bunsen burners and everything just all over the place. She's lousy with them. And so, I mean, exactly. It would make sense. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm totally cooking up this. Yeah, this is totally the cure for the legacy virus right here.
Colossus, drink this. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Can you still turn to metal?
I've just
I know
realized
it's an odd question, but I just wanted to know, just in case.
Science.
Side effects purposes.
Science. Got to test. So here's a theory that I have that I'm whipping up now based on that. So Life 10, if we take it that Moira is working on a cure, maybe has a cure, is the choice that Destiny referred to in House of X, number 2, when in the conversation, when she says to Moira, you have 10 lives, maybe an 11th if you make the right choice. Is the choice going to be, do you take the cure or not? Because if Moira takes the cure in Life 10, she's done. No more lives. Right?
Sure.
Cure to mutant ability, if it works. If she doesn't, which Destiny would consider the right choice, maybe that's how she gets the 11th life. Theory.
Gotcha.
Theory. I think that works.
Point.
That actually makes a lot
it.
of sense. I can jive with that because that is something that's kind of been, I think, the biggest mystery since House of X. One, if not the biggest mystery, it's definitely one of is that line of dialogue. You'll have 10 lives, 11 if you make the right choice. What does that mean? What's the right choice? And because we haven't seen Moira much, since House of X, that's kind of been the lingering thing. Like, okay, well, when are we going to find out more about this choice? What's the choice? And now it looks like we're actually getting very close to it. And if the choice is like to take the mutant cure or to not take the mutant cure, I think that would be a pretty big deal. I really think that would be a pretty big deal because it's like, for one, you're potentially taking a character off the board permanently, for the future in case any shenanigans happen. But yeah, I don't know. Moira has become like, you took this character who used to be like this kind of a side character, and they become now one of the most important pieces in all of X-Men lore now.
Yeah.
So it's got me curious, to see where it goes.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the biggest problems I have with that question, basically, like, if you make the right choice, 10 lives or if you make the right choice in 11th life, is it's sort of the assumption that I make based on that is like, oh, well, she's going to make the right choice. Because why on earth would you plant the seed of the coolest thing, a lifeline reset, for storytelling purposes if you aren't going to use it, right? That feels like a big old reset button you want to use, assuming there's, some level of success in X-Men comics, which obviously there has been. So to me, it's like, okay, she's going to make the right choice. We had the story is what is the choice and how do we get there, right? It's kind of like a given almost that she does.
There's something you just made me think, and I don't know, this probably has nothing to do with nothing, but remember there was a point where Destiny says, I know how to get rid of you. And she says basically, like, if you were to die before your X gene activates, then you wouldn't get to resurrect,
right?
Or not resurrect, but reincarnate rather. This is probably the dumbest thing that could possibly happen. I hope this doesn't happen. But part of me wonders if they're gonna butterfly affect this bad boy, and or bad girl rather, and like, what if, like, to let's say things get so bad that's like, okay, we got to have a lifeline reset. And of course, Moira, she's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna sacrifice myself, and then just in the womb, just, all right, I'm out. And that way the X-Men get their reset, and then she doesn't get to affect anything. They get to kind of have us. I don't want that to be what happens. But if it did, I would laugh, and then I would gently. Well, I don't buy physical anymore, but I would close the window of Comixology and then just get up and go outside and touch grass.
Yes. So so like, what if this life, so back to the alliance thing with Moira and Destiny, what if they finally, after all the hatred and battle that'll ensue, come to terms and they're like, all right, here's the path forward, we figured it out. Moira, if you do this, I will just politely end you before you turn 13. I will find you. We will do the most humane euthanization possible. No more fire, I promise. And just we will actually put you out of your, like, that's a very morbid, sad direction, but it's kind of, this issue makes me think like that might be what Moira wants. Like, she just kind of wants.
They're gonna
it
Don
to
Cheadle it. They're gonna do the Don Cheadle thing, like in Endgame, where he's like, just find baby Thanos and just.
And everyone's like, oh my god.
That would be wild. If they end Hickman's run by killing a child and everyone applauds it, that would be insane.
There's no.
I'm here for it.
There's no great way to do that. Like I don't know, but like that process kind of works. Honestly, it adds up. There's a reason some people are storytellers and some throw out wild theories on YouTube.
Yeah. The rest of us just read. We just read them. We just read them.
All right.
I don't. Yeah, that I will. I do. Because I just had just the most random of thoughts. The thing that I would be very curious about is whether or not Nimrod becomes the reason that potential alliance could happen. Because, not to throw back to old 90s, animated series, masterpiece, X-Men animated series, but I could very easily see a moment with Nimrod where, because he was once Erasmus, but now he's evolving into to become more machine than anything else. Yeah. Even Dr. Gregor kind of points this out a bit in this issue. But what if he gets to that point where he hits that same logical conclusion that Master Mold once had, where he's like, the only way to effectively get rid of mutants is to get rid of humans. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I got to get all of you now. And that is the thing that makes Orcus have to kind of be like, oh man, we got to do something different.
That makes sense. I can see that. Yeah.
And humanity then actually turning to mutants and being like, let's work together against machines. Right. That's kind of not something we've seen through these lifelines. So I'm potentially here for it. So speaking of machines, there is a few pages of good old Doug Ramsey, his lovely wife, Bay the Blood Moon, and we get an inversion of the scene that we saw in, I think it was Powers, where Doug touches a leaf. It's been much theorized about. The leaf gets all Warlocky, it gets all Phalanxy and techno-organic-y. We see an inversion of that in this issue. He touches the leaf, but this time it's him absorbing the techno-organic virus into his cool-looking arm, which apparently he takes off, right? Like, that's not part of his PJ set. Like, he doesn't wear the arm to bed. Right. So here he puts it on, and then Warlock pops up, they have a conversation, and then they're chilling, having a nice old time with Krakoa. And then there's also a data page that Black Tom Cassidy, who we know is very in tune, probably the most in tune of anyone through the pages of X-Force, with Krakoa, is having these sort of like nightmarish hallucinations in his dreams of machines under his skin. And clearly the reference here is like, oh, he's sensing the techno-organic stuff Doug's putting in the island, and it's not having a super positive impact. What do we make of Krakoa, the Phalanx, techno-organic stuff, and just like, what is Doug doing? Because Doug doesn't seem like the schemer type. He's not the dark, sinister, I have a betrayal type. So it doesn't seem likely that he's on board with that. What do you guys think is going on there?
Ooh, man. Oh, no, go ahead, Verno.
No, what I was going to say is there's so many things in this issue that they just set it up like that. They don't really give you anything more. I have no idea where they're going with that personally. So fire away, Ernie.
Are you bothered by that? That the issue is kind of like, hey, remember this thing that we've wanted answers to for 2 years? Right. Yep, we're still talking about it. Like, is that actually kind of annoying?
That and also just the length of time that they spent recapping the situation between Mystique and Moira. I get it, and Destiny. I get it for readers that weren't following it, but it's like, if you weren't following it, what are you doing anyway? Like, go back and read House of X, Powers of 10. It was, I get why they did it, but to spend 3 pages and redo the whole scene with bonus content, that was a little much, and I
got PTSD from it. I was taken back to Ten of Swords. And I forget the exact issues, but I think it was like X-Men number 12 or 13, where Apocalypse was recounting the history, and then like I forget how many issues in, but another like somewhere towards the middle of Ten of Swords, they had an issue that was mostly just that issue.
It's like 3 issues in a row, yeah.
Yeah, like but it was literally just that original issue, but with different text. Because it was from another perspective.
Yeah, I kind of liked that, but I get what you're saying. It was a little. It reminds me of that. I like this. I liked that more than I like this. You know what I mean?
The benefit of hindsight, I do too. I don't know. It bothered me. That was, if there was any one thing that particularly bothered me about this comic, it was that. And then of course, as Dave just pointed out too, just the whole dangling a question that's been a question since 2019 and still not answering it, just kind of being like, hey, we still don't have an answer.
Then again, we're all so close to the situation. I think he might have just been kind of trying to remind some people about all these little things, and then, but I mean, as long as he answers them by issue number 4, I guess then we'll kind of see,
So I'm glad you said that. So yeah, if we get to issue number 4, and I still don't know why the hell Cypher is infecting Krakoa and also absorbing the transmode, whatever. From the phalanx into himself from the leaves that he is already infected with it. I'm not gonna lie. We were joking earlier about how when the Onslaught saga started, that was what made me stop reading X-Men. Yeah. And the Clone Saga made me stop reading Spider-Man. This Inferno will make me stop reading X-Men if that happens. If we get to the end of this and there's no answers, there's no answers whatsoever. It's all just been in self-indulgent just rigmarole. Yeah, that would upset me.
It would be lost all over again. It would just be the thrill was all in the questions, and there was no intent of ever paying it off or no plan. That would be the most frustrating outcome. I think, especially because if we weren't in this timeline of Hickman's done, and it was instead like, oh, he's staying and he loves working with this team and he's going to be on X-Men forever, then it would be like, you can ask more questions. Like you can get away with that. And you'll be requiring some patience still. I don't know that it'd be the right decision, but you could get away with that in the sense of people being like, oh, you got to trust this creator. He works on long time. You can make those arguments. Mm-hmm. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. This is the last story. So the answers need to be here, or they're not going to come in a Hickman written comic, which is fine in and of itself. But again, I do think the most understandable and genuine criticism of kind of the setup focused nature and the question based nature of this first issue is these feel like questions that should have been progressed over the course of 2 years of Dawn of X and Reign of X. And the fact that everything was put in isolation, so much of House and Powers, which got everyone so excited, and then all those questions were put in isolation, being like, we'll get to them later as part of the grand plan. I don't think that was the right call. I kind of just don't. Yeah. Even when there were comics I liked, and I've obviously talked plenty about Dawn of X stuff that's good and Reign of X stuff that's great. I love Sword. Al Ewing's Sword number 8 was my favorite comic today. I haven't talked about that. Sword number 8 was my favorite comic today, and Inferno number 1 came out. I didn't expect that. Inferno, you're not with me. That's all right. It's all right. Yeah. I get it.
I liked it. I'm just fucking with you.
Well, no, I didn't get to read all of Sword, but what I did read, I thoroughly enjoyed. For one, it's focusing on the Queen Bee, and that's all. That's a win for me automatically. But at the same time, I feel like Al Ewing is, and I think you said something about this on Twitter not too long ago, talking about who should be the next head of X. Yeah. And there's definitely names that come into mind, but I can say the writers who have been the most consistent to me throughout all of this from the jump have been Al Ewing. Yeah. And I think Leah Williams being a close second, because somehow she made me give a squirrel fart about X Factor. Yeah. Which that was impressive, very impressive. But I feel like Al Ewing is the guy. Yeah. I feel like he has an understanding of, and Verno and I talked about this before. He has an understanding of how to tell a Hickman-like story, but leaving out some of those parts that Hickman throws in that don't jive. Yeah. The things that annoy me about Hickman, he leaves out, and he fills it with something I think that's better. We were talking about the data pages and stuff like that. I feel like he uses those better than even Hickman does.
Definitely, yeah.
A lot of the times. And I feel like when he promises you something, he says, hey, Here's some breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not going to have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, for those breadcrumbs to lead me somewhere.
Yeah.
And in Al Ewing, I trust.
Yeah.
For me, he's that good-looking girl that nobody will shut up about how hot they are. It's like, yeah, she's good-looking, but I mean, why are we making such a big deal out of her, everybody? Like, you know what I mean? I've liked every single issue of Sword, but it's just another Marvel book to me. It's not in my top 10. It's probably not in my top 20 series that I'm reading right now.
Dang,
but it's good. It's
No.
good. It's solid.
No,
I'm
that's
reading
fair.
a lot
That's
of
fair.
stuff. You know?
Yeah, no, and I hear that. I love Sword. I mean, I think it's absolutely delightful. I think his Immortal Hulk has been 1A or 1B on my favorite Marvel books of the last couple of years.
Definitely.
Right? So that's and his Ultimates was awesome too. But Al Ewing has misses. I think when you go down the resume, like there are amazing hits, and then there are some kind of stuff where you're like, oh, really? He wrote that? Like that wasn't that good.
He takes more chances than Hickman does. He'll write more
Yeah.
books than Hickman. So I mean, I got to give him credit to that. He takes more swings, so he's going to have more misses.
I think that's fair. But what I was kind of going to when we started talking, Al, who I absolutely think is like the fact that he's there as part of the X Office, I feel a lot more confident and comfortable being like, yes, we should keep reading X-Men comics, so long as Al Ewing has a presence. But what I was going was, I think the fairest criticism here is X-Men is a run, X-Force is like the way Inferno teases all these things X-Force has been doing that are very relevant to the Orcus battle.
Yeah.
And like how like Hickman is selling a threat of Orcus, and he is talking about an attention being paid to them by mutant kind that is nowhere to be not nowhere, but it is very rare to be found in the actual ongoings that built to this point. Like I don't think that threat was developed as clearly as much of a through line through the Dawn and the Reign. And I'm not saying it literally all had to be that, but all the stuff that they're talking about here in a data page about X-Force missions, about King Brew, about TechNet, which is totally an Excalibur thing, none of those things happened in the actual series. So instead of feeling like, oh, this era of collaboration and of paying attention to everything that's going on in Krakoa paid off now, because we're getting these cool callbacks to all these other series, I kind of had the reaction of like, why didn't this stuff happen? Like, why didn't we connect dots? And why are we only now? Again, it kind of feels like this isolated Hickman verse, which is the total antithesis of what the Krakoa era of X-Men comics have been, which is this grand experiment in collaboration. You know?
Right.
There's a disconnect there, at least to me.
Well, and like so when they give us the 16 instances of attacks on Orcus, I wish we would have seen those in other issues.
Hells yeah.
I wish we would have seen, because I feel like X-Force deals more with Xeno than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And Orcus, I guess, comes up with Sword from time to time, or at least once or twice. It's come up at certain points. But I do, I when I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh wait, they got assassins from Avalon to attack Orcus. Why have I not seen this? Why? I was like I started going back through like Excalibur. I was like, wait, did I don't know, man. That's a otherworld thing. And did I miss something? I was like, wait, was that in the last issue of I thought that was Dr. Doom in the last issue of Excalibur. Wait a minute, hold on. And then I started going back and looking at wait, the Brood?
Right.
The Brood attacked Orcus? Wait a minute. Let me go back and look. Wait, no, this didn't happen in Jerry Duggan's X-Men. This happened in Hickman. Wait, the Brood attacked Krakoa. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait a minute. Last time I saw Brew was in New Mutants, and they were teasing sinister stuff about him. Wait a minute, I'm confused now. What is happening? Am I taking crazy pills? Are these things happening and just no one's told me about them? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how I felt about those 16 instances. Like I think the first one was like Domino escapes, and the first thing I thought was, when did that happen?
Yeah, right.
It had me thinking X-Force #1. I love
same.
Hickman's good at that. It was like in those vault issues where he'll write a data page that could be somebody's run on a comic book. You know what I mean? Like all sorts of crazy things happen just in his data page. The Brew thing, and Dave, maybe this is something you were going to bring up later, but I'll just ask you guys, like, if that's all we get, because he set that domino up forever ago. Now, there's never been a more obvious domino. If Inferno #4 ends by Brew showing up with all the brood and saves the day. It's like, oh, cool, he set that up. But it's like, well, we saw it coming forever ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know how cool like that would have been. But if this is all we get of that setup, which I loved, I loved the setup, the lead up to King Brew, I'll be a little bit disappointed. Like, do you guys think we'll get more of the brood in Inferno, or do you think that's it?
That one in particular would be so weird not to go back to, because Hickman literally used the New Mutants run that he did to set that up. Like that was the net of New Mutants, was like they have a King Egg now, right? And then he went back to it in X-Men, and we spent a few issues there. So yeah, to not have Brew and the Brood be a bigger thing would be tremendously disappointing. Like if it was genuinely just like this one little, oh, they attacked for us thing, I'd be like, all that work for that? Like that's that's not worth it.
So cheap.
Well, what I'm afraid is that he had more of a long-term plan, and then he decided to leave, and he's like, all right, I'll just throw that in a little line in a throwaway data page. Like, I hope that's not the case, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Did this issue feel rushed or compressed to either of you guys? Did you feel the, oh, I need to finish everything vibes of it?
You know, Berno, it's funny you said that, because now that Dave asked the question, that's been on my mind.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, a lot of the time we've been talking, it's kind of been on my mind. Like, what if Hickman was actually supposed to hang around a lot longer, and he just suddenly decided, nah, I'd rather do something else. I'm bored. Or maybe there was a disagreement with Marvel or something, or I don't know, whatever. But I feel like, yeah. I felt I don't want to say it was like I felt like the whole thing was rushed, but I do feel like this is the race to get to the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, we only got 4 issues, and I can only get 50 pages. So, all right, well, cool. Let's wrap this. Like, I feel like someone hit the wrap it up box.
Right. Yeah, and I mean the irony. It's like I know where you're coming from.
Like
they're
playing him off the stage.
Yeah, the irony of that though is like we literally were just moments ago talking about, or I was talking about like I wish they had progressed this faster. So it's like,
yeah,
it's hard to call the journey rushed, because it was not.
Well, no, the journey definitely not.
But these issues in particular might have some of that flavor, I think, because now it's like, yeah, we have to try to get to everything. So not everything, and Hickman does not come by that way of storytelling naturally. Like, he'd rather take the beats of Doug having a morning routine and waking up and kissing his wife. Like, he's going to take those beats. And that's going to eat up page count, even in a giant size comic. So yeah, again, like, it's a comic I like a fair amount. It's good. It sets the stage. I'm excited about what Inferno is going to be. But I do wonder about the size and the scale. And I think at the end of the day, like, by the end of this, we're just not going to have answers to all the things that were said. We're just not going to have, it's like Brew might just be a callback. And Hickman's like, yeah, I'm leaving it for other writers. Cool. Vita Ayala touched it in New Mutants. She gets to deal with it, or they get to deal with it rather. Like that might happen. The Vulcan stuff. By the end of this, like, that's not touched on in this issue.
That's another thing. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's not touched on at all here.
Vulcan thing.
I hope it all ties in. I hope he just, by issue 3, he's dropping everything. Vulcan, Phalanx, everything just comes together. But I don't know, it'll be hard to make that not feel rushed. I'm honestly, like, when the announcement of Inferno came, I was like, okay, all right, they're making him do another event. But then when we learned, like, this is it, like, my excitement level went way up, because it's like, okay, they're not going to drag it out anymore. We're about to get slam banged with all sorts of Hickman craziness.
Yeah.
So, but back to your point before, as I'm sitting here thinking about what we got in issue number 1, for 52 pages, we didn't get slam banged. We just we took our time. But it is issue number 1
of what is ultimately going to be a 200-page hardcover. It's going to read that way, full.
Yeah. It's, what it reminds me? It reminds me of, God help anyone that doesn't understand where I'm coming from. It's more of a wrestling thing. But it reminds me of that dream match. You get the 2 best superstars, like the most popular guys. You get them in the ring going against each other, and they're just kind of feeling each other out for the first, 2 or 3 minutes of the match. That's what this felt like to me. Like, not in a bad way, but it's just like, all right. Let's go. All right. I see the potential. I see exactly where this can progress to and become like a much significantly bigger thing. Though I will say, I don't expect the Phalanx to factor in to anything.
Yeah.
In regards to this, I think that would almost be a bridge too far. But I do feel like Hickman is setting up somebody,
right,
in the X office to tackle that, like whether it's Jerry Duggan with his X-Men series, or if it's Al Ewing with Sword, or who knows. It could even, like I actually think Sword would be probably the best place. I also wouldn't be surprised if Vita Ayala got to tackle it with New Mutants, just because that's where Warlock tends to pretty much hang out these days.
Yeah.
But I do feel like, like what you said, Dave, I do feel there are going to be some of these threads that will not get answers from Hickman.
Yeah.
Like he's teeing people. He's basically setting up the alley-oop for somebody else, and they can either kind of like how we always have those where and even Hickman's done this, where he's taken things that were nods back to previous writers, previous X writers from like anywhere between 5 to 10 years prior, even longer. And he's like, well, I'm gonna kind of pay this off a little bit in my own little way, or I'll do this here in my own little way. Like I kind of feel like he's setting that same situation up for everybody else in the X office, one way or the other. But
out of everything, the Phalanx is the one that I want Hickman to do that. I mean, I want him to do all of it, but out of everything that he's set up, that's the one thing that I do want to definitely have him do. Yeah. Now, Al Ewing in Sword, I think with his Marvel cosmic knowledge and just his style, he is the other guy to do it for sure.
Yeah. He'd have the sci-fi cosmic chops, I think, to potentially pull that off in a way that not a lot of writers have. Okay, so let's start to wrap this up. I think final thoughts around what do we think. So Inferno is 4 issues. I'm confident, like you just talked about, Ernie, like I think Hickman's going to set up a lot of assists. I do also think he's going to flush some home, right? There's going to be a handful of dunks here that are like, that's Moira's story. That's Destiny's story, right? That's kind of what I had in mind for that. What do we think are the big things that are going to get or like what are you looking forward to getting answers on most? Let's put it that way. And how will that set the stage for like a new era in 2022? Because 2022 is going to feel different with comics, right? Whether it's literally new titles or just the status quo has changed so much. Verno, let's start with you. What are you looking forward to the most by the end of this?
I guess it's all things Moira. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, it's the Phalanx, but that, as we've been discussing, that's the one that I don't feel like we're gonna get. Although I don't know. I mean, actually, I'd be kind of surprised if Hickman didn't touch that before we left. But yeah, it's Phalanx. It's Rasputin. I want, what I mean? I want that would be amazing if like Rasputin showed up with Zorn. They're like, oh man, black holes are a bitch to travel through, but here we are. Like that would be incredible. Yeah. So I mean, as many things as he can wrap up from House and Powers as possible, but especially the Phalanx and the Moira post-humans. I want it all. I want everything.
Yeah, right. That's the problem. Yeah. That's the challenge. Ernie, what do you think? What do you most want to see by the end of this?
You know what? I mean, definitely I want to see the shape of like the shape that Krakoa takes.
Yeah.
In a, not saying this is what's going to happen, but in a post Charles Magneto leadership, where maybe there's different people in charge after it's all said. Like once all the dust is settled, all the smoke is cleared, what if we end up living in a world where Mystique and Destiny are calling the shots? Or Destiny, Mystique, and Moira are calling the shots? Like what if we live in that kind of world where the villains not saying Moira is a villain, but the people who have been typically bad guys in X-Men history, because we know Sabretooth's coming back. Eventually, at some point, Apocalypse is going to come back. It probably won't be anytime terribly soon.
Yeah.
But what if? Because what it's looking like right now is the Quiet Council is starting to look a lot more like a rogues gallery. Than anything else. That's kind of what I'm like, because they said one of the things I think Hickman said at one point was that Krakoa is going to be drastically different once all this is over. Like it's not going to be the same as what it was before. Right. There's this fire is supposed to bring change, and that's what I want to see. I want to see how they prosper under a completely different set of leadership, especially with everybody having been so disenfranchised Emma has been disenfranchised. She's kind of seen like, y'all messing up. The Five apparently may be feeling that way as well. Other people are, even Wolverine has said a lot of times throughout his own series and in other books that, this place is kind of making us soft. We don't have the same edge we used to. And even Cyclops to a degree kind of seems like him and Jean kind of I won't say they don't seem disenfranchised, but they seem like, we could do better.
Yeah.
Right. I want to lockstep with Xavier and Magneto.
Right. No. I want to see where they go forward from here, because that's what we've seen the most of is Magneto and Charles. I want to see new leadership.
Yeah. No, I think those are great picks. I think I want to see all those things for sure. I mean, I think what I want to see probably the most is the closest we can get to an era of finality to this idea of Hickman's X-Men. Because I think it's going to continue to be the biggest barrier for X-Men comics moving forward is just the constant comparison in 2022 to be like, it's not as good as it would have been if Hickman was here, or what would he have really done if he had the chance? And I think like one thing we have to consider is like if Inferno dunks enough things home, this might be what he was really going to do. Like this might mostly be what the plan was. And then probably there's some like kind of future state like, Lifeline reset, or this is how the Phalanx really come into this. I mean, I think to what you said, Verno, one thing that I would leave Inferno feeling very disappointed if it didn't tease out some way that Powers of 10 is relevant, and that future timelines and all of that hard sci-fi stuff is relevant to the story that is still going on. Because we do, like, I think really I just want future timeline stuff, honestly. Like where is our Days of Future Past? What does that look like? Can we get an issue in here? Like if issue 3 of Inferno is future timeline, Days of Future Past type vibe, this series will be amazing. I'll love it.
Right.
Like almost certainly. So I think that's probably the thing I want to see the most, because otherwise we get out of this and it'll be like just a checklist of like, well, we didn't get this, we didn't get this, we didn't get this.
Right.
We got a cool Moira story and great, I dug it, but we didn't get all these things. And I just think that's going to be very unsatisfying for the vast majority of readers who were brought into this by a House and Powers series that was so good and teased so much. It was airtight, but it also just all the power stuff was like, we have a vision for the future and science fiction of X-Men that just has not been tapped into. So I definitely want to see that more than anything. I think definitely like the expectations around Krakoan leadership and what the island looks like that stuff is all kind of besides the point. It's all kind of not the point, because the point is the thing Moira says when she comes into the room and sees Professor X and Magneto and says, are you all here to start talking about the only thing that matters, mutant survival? And it's like, that's the only thing that matters here is the long-term planning, is the long-term survival. Everything else is window dressing. Krakoa's window dressing. Like that's just a means to an end. So I want to see more of that. I want to see where we might go. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know, as the issues continue. So this is going to come out through the end of the year. We'll have issue 2 at the end of October, issue 3 November presumably, and then we'll end in December. Definitely want to have you guys back on for definitely the conclusion. If one of these issues is an absolute bombshell, then definitely you'll be getting some messages, and we'll see if we can do it. But thanks to everybody who jumped on in the chat. I really appreciate everybody joining. Vernos, Ernie, did either of you guys read Wolverine today? I have one question about it.
I have not read Wolverine.
I read it yesterday, and I've read like 16 books yesterday. I remember there was some snickting. He said bub once.
So here's the question. If you have an answer, great. If you don't, I'll get to it next week. It was shown that there's a secret part of Krakoa that had some revival eggs and another Cerebro helmet. Do you think this has anything to do with what's going on in Inferno?
Yes. No, I don't know.
Okay. I'll tackle it next week.
Yeah, just based on the information, I would say, even though I haven't read it, I would say it probably does.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they're just the way that everything is set up. It's like, it does seem like Hickman is in his own little bubble half the time. I don't think that there's anything that's going to be super current right now. Like the fact that it didn't tie in with Trial of Magneto. I feel like if it's happening right now in Wolverine, then it probably won't have anything to do with Inferno. That's just my gut.
How weird is it going to be to be reading X books over the next 4 months that are like Inferno agnostic? That's going to be so weird.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Like
having a pro tie-in argument is clearly not a non-starter. Like nobody comes out and they're like, I need more tie-ins, right? Like it's not a popular opinion.
No.
But
right, I was thinking a little bit ago.
Weird.
I almost said it. Then I'm like, wait a minute. What am I about to say?
What am I saying?
It's like,
What do you mean tie-in?
Yeah.
I think the closest we get to like trial, like tying into this is Magneto's wearing the same costume. That's really it. There's no mention of the Scarlet Witch being back. There's no mention of Mystique, who has kind of been I don't say a central figure, but a person of interest.
Oh yeah.
In Trial of Magneto. So it's kind of like, I don't know.
Right.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate you all in the chat. Thanks everybody who donated for this. That's super, super generous of you. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at Comic Book Herald Online. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do all sorts of X-Men chats like this on the regular. Verno, where can people find you?
Well, I have traditionally only been on the podcast, but if I could beg, if you want to see a grown man beg, I just started this YouTube channel about a month ago. So I'm only at 105 subscribers. If I can get some people, go search the Cerebros on YouTube. I do weekly non-spoiler reviews on a variety of books, a whole bunch of books. And then I do every Sunday, I have on guests like you two handsome fellas right here, and we talk about some of the best books of the week. I've got Rockin' Robbie Billups from Pop Culture Philosophers, one of the best people in the industry out there. He's on the show with me this week, so really looking forward to that. And yeah, man, that's about it.
Nice. Ernie, where should people look for you?
Oh man, you can find me primarily on YouTube, youtube.com/BlerdWithoutFear. I do a lot of X-Men coverage. I also do coverage of other comics as well. Like sometimes I do Daredevil, sometimes I do Thor, sometimes I do Hulk, sometimes I do Venom. I do DC books every once in a blue moon. I've been doing a lot of the Milestone Media relaunch stuff, and I also like to make videos breaking down lesser known characters. So that's what you can expect over in Blur Without Fear's neck of the woods.
Don't forget the Blurred Cave live every Saturday at noon.
Yeah, exactly. You know what?
What a good hype, man.
That was actually a good plug because I sure as hell forgot it. But yes, I also do the Blur Cave every Saturday. So come through. I'm always talking about the best and worst of what's going on in the realm of comic books, comic book movies, and comic book TV shows.
Perfect. Thanks so much, you guys, for hopping on. I really appreciate it. Everybody else, I'll see you next week on Casual Krakoa, and we'll